Marks 13 years since the Marikana massacre. 34 miners were killed by the South African Police Service on the 16th of August 2012. Families of the victims are still waiting for justice as no one has been prosecuted for the killings. Joining us now is Nomzamo Zondo, Socio-Economic Rights Institute Executive Director. Nomzamo, good to have you and thank you very much for coming on. For your client, 13 years on, firstly, do they feel those who should be held accountable have been held accountable? Secondly, consequence for those who've been held at least accountable to some degree. And of course, the agreements around the reforms, if whether those have been in place. But let's start with accountability first.
Good afternoon, Tabo. Look, I think when we are involved in the commission process, our clients made a commitment to pursue justice until the end. We have a progressive constitution. I think they expected that the journey wouldn't last this long, to the extent that there was a time that they felt tired. But when you speak to them now, one, the fact that no one has been criminally prosecuted for the events of the 16th not only angers them, but it energizes them to continue the pursuit for justice. In as far as they have seen prosecutions, I think it gave them that sense that their lives and the lives of their loved ones also matter. And in the two criminal cases that went before the Northwest High Court, even though they didn't result in convictions, the very fact that those 9 policemen stood with their backs against the wall, having to answer for the actions that they carried out in Marikana those many years ago, was itself a piece of solace for them.
Do you get a sense that from, I suppose, the government point of view, the powers that be, political heads, and I suppose those who were in leadership at the time, they feel that that is as far as accountability needs to go, with those police officers at least being put before a court of law?
Look, I mean, unfortunately, I think the one on the political front, there isn't a sense that there's a responsibility to provide justice to the families. And of course, there are questions around beyond the police, firstly, who were on the ground. They are commanders, anyone at Lonmin who was involved. There's been complete silence. And so for our clients, the sense is they're going to continue to pursue justice against all the people they feel wronged by. And there is a longish list. But at this point, they are grateful that at least those 9 policemen went inside the dock and had to face the charges. But of course, for many of our clients, because the incidents that the prosecutions were only related to 4 deceased mine workers, there's a question around what about the rest? And therefore, for them, it is we want to see prosecutions. They are asking the NPA to ensure prosecutions. They've tried to engage the NPA, firstly, one-on-one, almost at an arm's, at a close quarters in the matters that were before court, but also through our office, engaging the NPA officers about when will we see prosecutions. And unfortunately, the responses have continued to be soon. They will come. In fact, 2 years ago, we had a press announcement from the DPP of Northwest, who said the Marikana cases are now back inside the Northwest DPP's office. They are of priority to them. They've put together a high-flying team. They have been given resources to ensure that the case file is looked at, and soon we'll see action. And we sit here in 2025, and we don't have much to show for.
Do you get a sense that those with political powers, certainly who would have been involved at the time, be it at a level of Minister of Police, level of Minister of Mineral Resources, be it at a level of NEC member of the African National Congress, or even others are saying this would have been also a battle between those who are in the labor movement, have been let to go on with their lives, I suppose, while the families are still remaining with that sense of incompleteness?
Look, I mean, I think immediately after the massacre, and in fact, even after the Commission of Inquiry, even people whose actions were called into question receive promotions. They continue to have political relevance. They continue to have support, both within political circles, but also from the public. And people will point out the current president. People will point out the former president who still has that very same political support. People will point out what happened to those ministers. And in effect, there was almost no accountability for them for what they did in Marikana. Other people probably will say they had a harder time, but still they also didn't account. People like the former National Commissioner, Ria Piecha, like the former Provincial Commissioner, Mbombo, they didn't account, but still in terms of for what they did and what they were involved in, there was absolutely no accountability. In fact, for many of them, there was almost a dividend.
Yeah. I mean, many people, of course, view that particular email between NEC member then, President Cyril Ramaphosa now, with the mine bosses and I suppose with the Minister of Police calling for concomitant action as the catalyst, right, of what would have happened. But you are saying that in your pursuit for justice, you've also, come across a number of other obstacles, including the former president, Jacob Zuma, who was trying to block the release of the inquiry.
Look, I think one, President Ramaphosa himself, when he came before the Commission of Inquiry, accepted that his actions might not have been appropriate, right? He would accept that they were unlawful, but that they wouldn't have been appropriate. On the other hand, the sitting president at that time didn't just simply, of course, as of help to us and to the families, he did appoint the Commission of Inquiry, which enabled the families to gain access to a whole lot of information, including understanding that the deaths of their loved ones were foreseen even before the morning of the 16th, to know that there were meetings that happened on the 15th, which were the reason why the 16th had to happen. But at the end of the day, it was when the report had to be released, President Zuma then said no. First of all, he refused. And then on the eve, when he decided to release it, he won't even give the families the dignity of receiving the report ahead of the public. And in fact, decided to then do a public release. And in that public release, said, we mustn't forget that the mine workers who died there also killed other people. And there's almost this question that, yes, all of us know that there are 10 people that die immediately before, in the days leading up to the massacre of 34. Some of them are killed by the police. Some of them must have been killed by striking mine workers. But to then say the people who died, blanket, are responsible for those deaths, also undermined the grief of the family, undermined the obligation that he had to make sure the families had justice at a time when they even had to take him to court to make sure they have the report released.
Now, there would have been recommendations there of reforms, I suppose, in policing in particular, two reforms in terms of the mine operations and how they handle their workers, but maybe even reforms around mine security and so forth. Have you seen any of those recommendations implemented?
Look, so one of the first of all, one of the things that we forget is how differently the salaries of the mine workers look today than they did look at that time. And that's testament to the mobilization of the mine workers, the mobilization of AMCU, mobilization of other unions within the sector. But also we know that in relation to the police, there was a panel of experts that was meant to look into crowd management and policing, which issued a report, which delivered it to the minister, which sat and gathered dust for years and was only released to us on the death of Mthokozisi Ntumba in 2021. And when that report was released, again, there was an opportunity for many people to advocate for it to be implemented. We are grateful, of course, that in 2022, we could see that within SAPS, there was an attempt to engage with the recommendations made by that panel of experts, that there was National Instruction 4, the revision of National Instruction 4 took into account some of the important things that the panel of experts had pointed out: the need to protect life first, the need to differentiate between actors within the crowd, the need that actually the public order policing at its core is about facilitating the right to peaceful protest. That when the police are there, they're about making sure that citizens, people living in South Africa who are protesting can actually speak up. They are there to help them as opposed to silence them. And we are looking forward to seeing, of course, we are now 3 years later, how that national instruction is being implemented. Secondly, of course, one of the things that was a problem in Marikana was that there were people who were killed by R5 rifles many, many meters away from the initial contact point between the mine workers and the police. And the fact that the question was, but why are assault rifles being used within public order policing? And again, this national instruction accepts that there is no place for that, that we shouldn't have seen what happened to those 4 mine workers happen to somebody else. And again, it will be important for all of us to look and make sure that not only are those rifles removed from public order policing, but as the experts in the Commission of Inquiry recommended, that they shouldn't be within policing.
Now, how do you prevent similar failures from happening in the future? I mean, we've got something that is happening today called the National Convention ahead of the National Dialogue happening tomorrow again. Are these issues that are supposed to be raised in that forum?
Look, I believe that at this point, I mean, there are many people who are in civil society who are participating in that forum. And I believe they'll be addressing the failures of policing, the failures of accountability within policing. And Marikana is the one big example of a police failure and also a failure of accountability. And I suspect that tomorrow it will be even much harder to have conversations in the National Convention on the very day of the massacre without thinking about what it means to be South African post-2012.
Nomzamo, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming on. Nomzamo Zondo, Socio-Economic Rights Institute Executive Director there. Reflections on the eve of the commemoration of the massacre in Marikana. This was, some 13 years ago, right?